Gabe, does that give you some thought as well about, not just that list that we went over, but maybe any particular aspect that strikes you as something we can learn from, and not just saying, here's a aspect of Clery, but hey, here's a way it could actually be used to empower some proactive features.
Yeah, and maybe to just I'm gonna roll off Kathy for a minute because you triggered a few things, but this idea of sort of shifting our language as Clery professionals and sort of elevating and how do we talk to senior leadership to address or identify if there are those issues in administrative capability, because honestly, I see a lot of coordinators on here, and anytime a report comes out and you see more often now administrative capability, it's chilling, right? Is it essentially a low or lack of confidence in leadership? That language should get everyone's attention. And sometimes we're almost trying to help our leaders help themselves, right? And whenever I think of administrative capability and sort of more broadly, Kathy, as you was talking about with risk, Clery comes with very high inherent risk, right? You can drop the ball very easily. There are big implications if you do. Our work is to take that inherent risk, develop a strong program, and what is left is the residual risk, right? And so the concept of getting leadership engaged is really interesting. And I hopefully have a few tips. But I did have a leader ask me one time, like, how would I even know if we are practicing administrative capability, right? Like, you expect that to mean that they're dedicating some resources, that there's some engagement with leadership. But I built Clery programs at a few large institutions, and then I've worked sort of as a consultant helping folks. And one of the ways that we as practitioners often measure our Clery program is we go through the compliance checklist or the handbook and we're comparing, and that's an effective way to do it sort of in the weeds. But when we're thinking more broadly, I would just challenge you to think maybe from a different lens. And whenever I build a program or evaluate a program, I really start with two questions, and it tells me all I need to know about the health of the program. So the first question would be, if I'm talking to the Clery practitioner, can you describe your sort of your relationship with key personnel across the university? How are you working with them? What's that cadence look like? How are you sharing information? And that will tell you a whole lot about if senior leadership is bought in or not, in my opinion, right? Um, because that's sort of the first way I can assess it objectively. Um, Ways that we can do it, it may be a little easier, but it's less subjective. If I go in and I say, is this a good program? You could start by asking the Clery coordinator, do you have a strong program? They're probably going to say yes, but right. That's typically, we can go in and maybe assume the program is strong because Ed has not showed up and you have not received a report, right? That's sort of another option. And the third would be maybe to do your own internal research, do what I just said, compare the regs with what you're doing. But this first question of just give me the outline of what the relationship looks like. And if the answer is, well, I don't really work all that closely with the Title IX coordinator, but they provide statistics to me monthly or annually. Um, Maybe we don't really share information at all. They give me statistical numbers to include in the annual security report. We've heard, I've gotten the response a lot of like, listen, that office, they're over at the hospital. They don't care. They don't know about Clery. They don't care about it. Um, and then maybe it's like, well, we give them a 30-minute online CSA training like everyone else. So those responses are all sort of the check engine lights for me. And that's sort of what triggers that. And so
I like
that,
that.
yeah. So that layout of just the first of like understanding the relationships at the university. The second thing I do to assess that sort of administrative capability and what I suggest that you may try is when we evaluate our Clery program, based on the 7 elements of a effective compliance program. And that's something that a lot of ERM folks and like chief compliance officers look at. But oftentimes when we get to Clery, we kind of lose that bigger structure. We're so focused on just the requirements, right? And so, there are 7 standards there. It's published by the US sentencing guidelines of assessing a compliance program for strengths. And I'll read them off really quick, but I won't go into them. But it's essentially standards of conduct, policies and procedures, compliance officer and committee, which I think a lot of us have gotten to that point now, communication and education, internal monitoring and auditing, reporting and investigation,
Mhm.
enforcement and discipline, and then response and prevention. So I only say that because it's a really great tool. So if you're looking, whether you're looking at your program as a whole or individual pieces of your program, which maybe I could talk about like the crime log here in a little bit, you can put this assessment over it. And this is a way to report out to your senior leadership in language that they understand, right? And it's less about the technicalities of Clery. It's much more about the facts of here's where we're really strong, here's areas where we can improve. And it takes sort of that I hate to say emotional element out of it, but it sort of does, right? And it just is what
Yeah.
it is.